Today is the first day of me starting out my first experiment. Lately, I've been really into watching this woman on YouTube. She has a YouTube channel called Build with Leila. It features Leila Hormozi. She is the co-founder of acquisition.com alongside with her husband, Alex. Leila is an entrepreneur that has built and scaled many businesses, multiple businesses. Her approach is mainly geared towards business owners, and she has some really honest and tactical, no fluff advice. And I really enjoy watching her. I feel like she has a really good way of communicating. I wanted to try out some of her tips and see how they could apply to my own life. Although acquisition.com and her business and her whole thing is geared towards business owners, and I'm not a business owner, I came across a video of hers that I actually really wanted to try out. I felt like it could apply beautifully to any average person in their normal everyday life. I personally have tried starting my own side hustles. If you've ever done like any sort of like how to start your business from home type of searches on YouTube, then you'll probably start getting like the algorithm will probably start bringing you a lot of like business sort of videos. And I think that's how it brought me Leila's videos. I specifically want to talk about her video titled How to Articulate Your Thoughts More Clearly Than 99% of People. I personally have a really hard time communicating. It doesn't come easy to me. And so the idea is usually somewhat clear in my head of what I want to say. But when it comes to actually like it coming out, I get nervous or I start doubting myself or I overthink things. I'm a very like slow processor type of person. It feels like a lot of what I say just doesn't make any sense. Or I don't specifically get what I want out the way that I want it out, if that makes any sense. So this is where we're gonna start out with Leila Hormozi's How to Articulate Your Thoughts More Clearly Than 99% of People. I have my notes here that I wrote down. She's very straightforward and to the point of what she talks about in her videos, which I love. She put it in 5 like steps or 5 points. So in her video, she breaks it down pretty clearly. She'll tell you what to stop doing and then what you should start doing and replace that behavior with. Number 1, she says to stop over explaining and to replace that with pause and be okay with silence. Say what you need to say and then pause and be okay with that silence. When you over explain, it just kind of leads people to feel like you don't know what you're talking about, and honestly, I see that in my own life. Number 2 is to stop fidgeting, and she says to replace that with being controlled, precise, and slow, and to also have good posture, which speaking of, I think the end result with this is when you have good posture, you're being precise, you're being slow, you're being controlled, people tend to take what it is that you're saying more seriously and actually listen to you, and they feel like you know what you're talking about because you're not like fidgeting and being like, I think that's exactly how it's supposed to be, or I think that it should be this way. Or also, if you hear some rattling in the background, I apologize, that is my daughter playing. Number 3, she says to stop asking for permission and to replace that with taking ownership of whatever it is that you're talking about, essentially. And she starts talking about how there was a time in college where she had a group project and essentially nobody had picked out a leader, and she decided to step up to the plate and take ownership and become the leader because nobody else was kind of doing it. She says, I didn't ask permission to be the leader, I just kind of took ownership of that. Number 4, she says to stop avoiding hard conversations and to replace that avoidance with confrontation, but calmly. And I don't think she means confrontation as in you go out and just want to like fight everybody. If there's like a hard situation in your life that, or a hard conversation that needs to happen, even like talking with friends, with family, with your spouse, with your kids, with your work, what's it called? With your boss, face that instead of avoiding it. Number 5, she says to stop being inconsistent and replace that with emotionally regulating yourself and being consistent. Essentially, when you're applying all of these steps to your everyday communication, be consistent with it, and people will eventually start looking at you and respecting you and being able to understand you more clearly. And in her video, it's of course talking about in a business, they'll look at you more as a leader and respect you as a leader. But the reason that I wanted to apply this to my own life is because I have a hard time communicating, and honestly, a lot of these steps I struggle with. I do definitely over-explain. I definitely do fidget. I don't really take ownership of something. I just kind of, for example, in my own home, I do tend to let my husband kind of take the reins on things, which is okay, but I mean, it would be nice to be able to kind of bring some fresh ideas to the table and also help us out with our everyday life. As far as hard conversations, that's something that I definitely struggle with. I hate confrontation. I would rather go crawl under the bed. And honestly, this is where the self-progression, and I'm going to be really transparent with you guys, I have avoided a lot of hard conversations in my own relationship, and it has caused a lot of problems for us, and we've ended up arguing afterwards because I didn't want to have the hard conversation in the beginning, and if I had just gone ahead and had it, then a lot could have been resolved. So we're gonna apply these to our everyday life. This is a perfect week to try it out on because we actually have quite a bit going on, and we have a little bit of stresses going on. I will film a little bit every day and just kind of report back on how it has been going. So I wrote down everything that I am going to be doing this week as far as communication goes on my vanity mirror. That way I can look at it every single day and it's not just tucked away, and I can actually remember to do it. Okay, so I just wanted to check in and let you guys know how this week's project is going. I haven't had a lot of opportunities to go into some in-depth communication, like as far as, you know, talking about something super, super important. This morning was a nice, like, example. I had to communicate with my husband about a bill that I had forgotten about, honestly. And we only have a few days left to pay it, and I was really nervous about it because I thought that I would bring it up and then he would get annoyed with me for like having forgot about it beforehand. But the nice thing was that I did try to apply the strategies, so I had good posture, I talked more concise, slow, I tried not to fidget, and I'm pretty sure I didn't fidget. Instead of avoiding the hard conversation like I normally would do, I went ahead and just had the hard conversation. And it actually wasn't that hard of a conversation in the end because he took it really well. And yeah, that's just like a small way to apply her tips to just like a normal everyday life situation. But I know that if I had avoided the conversation and just kind of paid it myself, and then he noticed like, wait, why did you pay it so late, or not tell me about it, or just have ignored it, then that would have led to probably a more uncomfortable situation than I had imagined in my head. Anyway, I'll keep you guys updated as this week progresses, and I do have a phone call that I have to make. I'm a little nervous about it, but I'm hoping that I can apply the same tactics and see how it kind of applies to like over the phone. So
yes, I will keep you guys updated on that.
So I'm doing my makeup right now, and I thought I would update you guys on basically how that phone call went that I was a little bit nervous to make. Basically, I had to call the bank and ask them for something that was a little bit like not very usual, I guess you could say. I was really nervous, and I feel like normally when it comes to phone calls, I tend to do exactly the things that Leila had pointed out in her video to not do. Basically, I fidget a lot, I over explain a lot, or if you're one of these people, I would completely avoid the phone call in the first place, because I don't know if you guys have seen the meme of like when you have to call like the dentist or the doctor or something and you kind of just like avoid it, and or you have like your mom do it or something. Basically that has been me up until this point. I hate making phone calls. I hate talking on the phone. I don't know why. I think I just get really stressed out and put on the spot about what I have to say. I know it's over the phone, but I really try to apply the not over explaining. I kept my explanation very short and to the point. I tried not to fidget even though I was on the phone, because I felt like it would give me more anxiety to fidget. When Leila talked in her video about the fidgeting situation, she mentioned like leaders tend to have like hand gestures and kind of like communicate with their hands a lot. And I tried to apply that when I was on the phone. Basically just kind of like explain the situation and kind of go like this with my hands and stuff. And I feel like it helped. I don't know if that was like a mental thing, but I feel like it helped. And especially the whole avoiding hard conversations. I can't explain to you guys unless you're like also deal with avoiding hard conversations, how much I would avoid these sort of situations beforehand. And what would end up happening is I would avoid the phone call, and then that important thing that would really help us out would never happen. I know that this seems like such a silly, like little thing, just like a phone call, but I feel like self-progression really starts in the small things, like a phone call or like something that you're scared to do. Not avoiding things. If you have an avoidant personality, I feel like it definitely starts in the little things like that. And then you slowly start working yourself up to bigger things that you might be avoiding. Oh my gosh, my hair gets everywhere. I thought that was like a bug. It was my own hair. I don't know how to do my makeup. I kind of just do it like this, and I'm pretty sure there could be better ways to improve that. But something that I'm trying to do throughout this week is definitely reminding myself to apply these strategies, even to just like the tiny things, because like I said, it all starts in the small things, and then when the big things come around, it doesn't seem as intimidating or as scary. Yesterday I didn't really film anything at all. There wasn't like a lot of moments of interaction that I could probably be like, oh yeah, like I definitely tried out my, Layla's communication tips on. So yesterday was kind of like a passive day where I didn't really like implement much. But today I do have quite a few conversations that need to happen. I have a phone call with the dealership where I'm getting my car fixed at. We're taking my daughter to her checkup appointment, so I'll be definitely doing some interactions there, as well as like some important conversations that I'm having later with my husband. So today's like the final boss day. Tomorrow I will film my final sort of like update on conclusion wise as to how this week went. This is probably one of my favorite things to have. It's just missing a little bit of avocado and mayo, but other than that, looks bomb. It's Friday night and my husband and I are about to go do a movie night together. So before I settle down for the night, I wanted to just give you all a quick update on how today went. It is the last day of the experiment. Today I had a lot of interactions. Spoke with the dealership where I'm getting my car fixed at over the phone. I also went to the clinic for my daughter's 6-month checkup and had a lot of interactions there with the doctor and some nurses and the lady that checked us in and everything. Just kind of with my husband, just had some interactions as well. I tried to apply as many of the techniques that Leila talked about. I feel like I'm getting a pretty good hang of talking a little bit like more controlled, slow, precise, and trying not to over-explain. But I did have a little bit of trouble today. When I was at the clinic, I had a moment where I felt like the person that was checking me in I had presented some information to her that I needed to be changed in my medical record, and she wasn't, I don't know, it was just kind of like a vibe, but I kind of felt like she was just being a little bit rude in general, and I feel like I normally wouldn't, confront somebody like that, and if somebody's being rude to me, I probably wouldn't confront them either. And today was no different. I actually didn't say anything. I thought about it. I thought about being like, is there a problem? Or just kind of trying to, put a stake in that and just kind of like say something, but I didn't. I got a little bit too nervous. So I guess it kind of comes with practice, and that's something that I'm definitely going to be working on. The idea is to not only do the experiment for a week, but then also do a check-in a few weeks later on how those techniques are still being utilized in my everyday life, if they're making any sort of difference. But yeah, I didn't really have like an uncomfortable conversation or a hard conversation in that moment. I just kind of figured she was having a rough day and just didn't say anything. Which, you don't always have to go out confronting the world, but I think I came home and definitely thought to myself like, oh, I should have said something. Other than that, when I talked to the dealership today, tried to apply some of those tactics. I feel like it is a little bit easier over the phone. It's good practice because the person's not necessarily looking straight at me, but I can kind of like practice my slower movements, using my hands a little bit more, and not over explaining, not fidgeting. And so I feel like it's good practice. All right, I am gonna go enjoy my movie night, and I will see you guys in my wrap up conclusion of this week's experiment. Bye. So, after a full week of testing out Leila Hormozi's communication tips on how to articulate your thoughts better than 99% of people, here is what I found. First, let's kind of go over how they were applied. They weren't all face-to-face conversations that I was having. I did have mainly phone calls, if I'm being completely honest, and I did have a few face-to-face conversations as well. And then I did have a video call with my therapist. So there were definitely a few kind of like mediums, I guess you could say, of how these were applied. Hey, bye-bye. I will say that having phone calls was definitely a really good way to apply these tips if you're somebody that is hoping to kind of work on your communication and kind of ease yourself into doing it without kind of like going up in public speaking or something. Definitely try them out on phone calls first because it took off so much pressure. The phone calls was definitely nice because there was nobody watching me. And I could kind of like put my phone on speakerphone and just kind of like try to talk with my hands more, try to apply them more. If you're somebody that's looking, for example, to improve your communication, definitely recommend trying it on phone calls. So there were 5 tips that Leila talked about in her video. I'm not going to go over the tips again just because I feel like I kind of went through them quite a bit throughout the week. And if you've forgotten, I will put them right here. So how easy were these tips to apply to everyday life? I personally felt like 3 of the 5 applied really well day-to-day life. For me, the ones that I felt were really applicable to everyday life were to stop over explaining, to stop fidgeting, and also to stop avoiding hard conversations. The taking ownership and the emotionally regulating, I feel like I'm going to continue trying to apply them, but there weren't that many situations for me personally throughout the week where I felt like, oh yeah, like I'm definitely, need to take ownership over this, or I need to stop being inconsistent over this. For me, tip number 5, which was to stop being inconsistent / emotionally regulate, I feel like that's definitely talking more about being consistent with the tips. Maybe I'm misunderstanding that one. So what was my baseline in communication before this week's experiment? My communication to me personally was something that was lacking. I have analyzed a lot of my conversations and communication throughout my life, in relationships and in friendships, and it definitely feels like I'm just a very avoidant person. I don't like confrontation. I tend to kind of doubt myself a lot, and when there is something important to talk about, I just kind of push it off and over explain. I do fidget, all of the things that you could possibly think of to like be a bad communicator. That has been me. For example, I forgot to pay that bill all month long, and I felt like bringing it up to my husband was going to be like this big dramatic thing, and it honestly wasn't, and it wasn't a big deal. But because I don't have very good communication, I made it a big deal in my head, and I know that that's tied to anxiety. But that was kind of like my baseline before this week's experiment, and going throughout the week is just kind of like that avoidant, kind of murky communication that needed a lot of help. The biggest takeaway for me is that my communication did get better. And I'm not just saying that to be like, oh, look, this experiment worked perfectly, because it didn't work perfectly. I, for example, had that moment where I was talking to the healthcare worker that was checking me in to my daughter's appointment, and I felt like she was being a little bit rude. She might not have been, but I felt like she was. Instead of kind of calmly confronting the situation, I just let it go. So it's not to say that, everything worked out amazing. But from my baseline and from where I was starting, I do feel like my communication did get better. You might be watching the video and being like, just talk to your husband about the bill. It's not a big deal. But to me, it was a big deal because I made it big in my head. Not every tip felt natural right away, but I feel like the more that I was consciously trying to apply them to just normal everyday life, they started becoming easier to apply. And it's actually kind of funny because I didn't tell my husband what this week's video was going to be about. Every Sunday we have a little weekly check-in meeting just to kind of check in with each other. He surprised me by telling me that he felt like this week I was a lot more focused. I was kind of like, he just noticed a difference. Like he just said something was just better and I'm not totally sure what it was. Maybe you're somebody that wants to work on your communication for work, or maybe for like public speaking or talking to somebody in your life about something important. And maybe that's why you're kind of looking around on improvement videos on how to improve your communication. For me, it was just working on it in general, because for me in general, I felt like my communication was not good. And if we really get down to the core of the issue, my issue personally was anxiety and also doubting myself. And doubting myself led to more anxiety, and more anxiety led to more doubting myself. And it's just like this vicious cycle where I was just kind of in an uncomfortable, low kind of energy, and that made my communication not good. So for me, the root of the issue is that cycle of the anxiety and doubting myself. And once I started applying these tips to my weekly life, I've started to notice that the anxiety starts to lessen because I'm starting to kind of trust myself a little bit more. I'm feeling a little bit more confident. And because of that, my anxiety reduces a little bit. And then I have my husband validate me and say, you know what, something was better this week. And my anxiety lessens just a little bit more. And I have those hard conversations that I was so nervous to have that were in general pretty small, and my anxiety lessened a little bit more. And what does that do? It makes me feel less anxious. It fixes the issue that I want, which is the communication. And it overall just helped me feel a lot more confident over myself. So yeah, overall, I would say that Leila's strategies definitely helped me feel more confident this week. I feel like they definitely helped my communication. I feel like I definitely still have a lot of room to grow. It has only been 1 week. And so what I want to do is that I want to keep applying this week to week for a few weeks. And then I'll report back in an update video if there were any major changes in my life, kind of like if there was anything like, wow, crazy that I want to update you guys on as far as communication goes. I do want to continue to do some more communication videos, maybe try out different strategies from different creators or from different books. Thank you guys so much for being here and for watching my first experiment. If you've ever struggled with feeling misunderstood or not knowing how to articulate your thoughts, I would highly recommend applying Leila Hormozi's tips and just kind of seeing what kind of difference they make in your life and actually consciously applying them. And if you do, let me know how that goes down in the comments. I would love to hear your experience. It starts in these small moments. It starts in these small conversations. And then when you do have something bigger, say you have an opportunity at work to run a meeting by yourself, you do feel a lot more confident because you've been consciously applying these tips. And that's the great thing about self-improvement. So if you like this week's experiment, go ahead and click the like button and subscribe, and I will be here next week with a completely different project. Thank you guys so much, and I hope you have a great day. Bye.